Welcome everyone to the Climate Justice Week of Action. My name is Deanna LaFay and I'll be leading tonight's training like Osmar said. All right, we'll first have a discussion with David Cortez from the Sierra Club. Then we'll have a discussion, then we'll learn about the importance of addressing climate change in the classroom and end with a call to action. So now I'd like to introduce you all to Dave Cortez from the Sierra Club. He has dedicated his time to empowering his team to fight for energy solutions across Texas. So I first just want to give him a moment to introduce himself and share a little bit more if he wants before we get our discussion started. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, thanks, Diana and Texas Rising and TFN crew. Dave Cortez, I use he, him pronouns. I'm based in Austin, born and raised from El Paso, where I learned organizing and got into environmental justice work. I've been with the Sierra Club since 2011. Before then, I was with El Paso Acorn, fighting a copper smelter that was hurting our city there. If there's anyone from Chuco there, hello, good to see you. Say hi in the chat box. But yeah, I coordinate the Clean Energy for All work at Sierra Club in Texas. And that's a big project to make sure that we, as we fight oil, gas, coal, for clean energy, saving little animals, all that stuff, that we're trying to move toward one shared vision about building power for the people and trying to bring justice to those most impacted by the climate crisis. So I'll leave it there.
All right, well, that is some great work that you've done. And I definitely think that experience can shed some light on some of the questions we may have on how to get involved in climate justice. So I first wanted to give a bit of background information for those who are new to this fight about our relationship with energy in Texas. So in 2005, the legislature passed Senate Bill 20, which is a renewable energy law that has helped to increase our state's production of wind energy. So Texas currently gets about 1/5 of its power from wind energy, and the Green New Deal would create an infrastructure that's needed to reach our potential of producing up to 1.3 megawatts of electricity per year. So our first question is, what are some benefits of harnessing wind energy?
Yeah, thanks. If I can only see 9 of us in the screen. So if you've seen the windmills out in West Texas, just raise your hand, driven past them, or maybe on the coast. Awesome stuff, right? But also not the ideal form of energy that we want to go toward if we're talking about decentralized democratic systems of energy. What that looks like is having solar panels in your community, in your neighborhood, at the corner, at the school, on your rooftop, things like that. And that's what we're trying to move towards, because people have more control in how they get their energy, how they profit from it, etc. But for now, the wind power out in West Texas and along the coast from Corpus Christi down to Brownsville is it's incredible. That alone is displacing coal, dirty coal in the state. Having so much wind power come online out there is making coal and old fracked gas just not competitive in the market. So what that means is that it's cheaper. We're starting to see a lot of solar get built out in West Texas as well, where the sun just shines all the time and it's really highly concentrated. But still, we have to transfer all that electricity back to the cities. And we're talking, if you've ever made that drive, hundreds and hundreds of miles. So it's not ideal, but it is a huge boon and a huge help, a huge employer. It could be more. We don't subsidize clean energy nearly enough, or nearly on parity as much as we do with oil and gas, which is something else we can talk about. How do we grow these sectors? But on the days, just earlier this past week, we had some windy days, and wind was powering most of the state on those times.
Right, great. And so what does that transition look like? You said before that just this past weekend we did utilize that resource. So what does that look like? How would we make that an opportunity, or create the opportunity for other parts of the state?
Right. So, I think we're seeing this in the pandemic right now. We're struggling with our lifestyles of consumption, right? We're used to having things quickly, uh, cheaply, just on demand, and energy is not very different. The cleanest form of energy is going to be the one that the kilowatts that we don't use at all, right? So if we just keep growing and growing and growing and trying to find more and more sources of energy, it just makes it harder to make that transition. So I'm not saying that we need to go into the caves or dark ages or anything like that. We need our homes to be more efficient, um, our buildings to be more efficient if we can. If you live in an apartment complex, we can organize together to find ways to make sure that that property owner is upgrading those buildings without passing the cost on to you, something they really don't do very much at all. Same goes for water consumption. Um, we can do a whole lot more to just drive down how much energy we need to get through the state. But that's not as lucrative. And we have a lot of people invested in wasteful consumption of energy across the state. Oil and gas, oil doesn't power our homes. It doesn't turn the lights on. It's what moves us around the city. If we're going to transition away from fossil fuels, oil and transportation are going to be the biggest hurdle for us to figure out how to climb together. You've seen the pictures or the stories about how clean the air has been in India or in Italy, even here in some of the parts of the United States, because people weren't driving. Even with that, people in Southeast Dallas, around Joppy, in Houston along the ship channel, or the Refinery Row, south side, northwest side of San Antonio, they're still breathing polluted air because we're still burning fossil fuels for electricity. We can do a lot about that just by phasing out our old aging plants. Sierra Club, Environment Texas, Public Citizen, lots of local groups. Wherever you are, there's probably a way for you to plug in to get your city to move away from fossil fuels. It's more about how we do that to lay the track for the transition. Not so much, there's no policy solution alone to this problem. It's about people transforming how we operate in civil society. Are we willing to reduce our energy consumption? Are we willing to equally lift up the needs of working class people who just want work? Make sure that they can get employment in clean energy industry or clean economy industry. All these things matter in how we do it together. But if we, just push policy here and there, big oil is huge in this state. They have so much power. Even when the oil market just crashed, oil and gas, they get what they want, and it's going to take a whole heck of a lot of us to really push back and get something better.
I agree. And I also wanted to touch on a little bit of what you said earlier. We have noticed certain parts of the world being exposed to clean air for a change, or rivers running clearer than they've been in years. So the next question is, should we consider COVID-19 to be a climate crisis?
I was reading this, Deanna, when you wrote it and thinking about it long and hard. And I've seen different folks in the environmental movement and other movements trying to connect their work to COVID and things like that. So I want to be respectful of what this is and what people are going through. We are witnessing something unlike we've ever expected to see. I think most of us on this call can say, people our age. It's unprecedented. It's massive scale. It's shining a light on how broken our economic system is. I want to say that this is more about a broken economic system dependent on the exploitation of labor and workers and natural resources that transfers profits into the hands of the few at the expense of the rest of us. And climate change is very much embedded in that. I wouldn't say that one is the other. But we will see, and I'm really worried about what this summer is going to bring. We just saw the first named tropical storm off the Atlantic coast this week, tropical storm. Uh, you know, before hurricane season has even started, we have these named storms now. Um, if you lived through Harvey, or if you were part of anything that was impacted by Harvey, or Rita, or Katrina, or Ike, um, the Gulf is running 3 degrees above average in subsurface water temperatures. That means storms are going to be strong, and we just have to ask ourselves, what are those most impacted people by the pandemic going to do if another Harvey or something with stronger winds hits? And there's a good chance that could happen this summer. So climate change and the climate crisis only exacerbates the pre-existing broken social and economic crises that we're already facing every day in our lives, whether that's what you're seeing in public education right now, and children that can't get access to Wi-Fi, can't get to their online learning spaces. Well, what's going to happen when their homes are flooded out? Where are they going to be able to go get help if they don't have access to the PPE or other resources? These storms and natural disasters can be a backbreaker, and it's just really daunting what could come. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's hope we get through this year. But if the last few years have been any sign, that won't be the case. Something will happen. And we've seen it here in Travis County, other parts of the state. We've had several 100-year or 500-year flood events in 7 years' time. And so we need to be thinking, and all of us need to be organizing in our communities right now to make sure that those vulnerable, most impacted, least able to respond communities are being contacted, that we're supporting them. We have our list built. We have our rapid response teams ready to go. On the coast, that may look different than over here in Travis County, but yeah, it's I don't mean to be all scary here, but it is something that worries me a lot.
Yeah, I think we all definitely are worried about the possibilities of what could come out of this. But we do also want to acknowledge that because there's so many people who have been unemployed, that the Green New Deal may have more of an opportunity to employ those people if it's passed and if those resources are utilized. So the next question would be, how valuable is specialized education in climate justice?
Mm-hmm. My partner's in higher education, and if you all know folks in university spaces right now, either students or faculty or staff, talk to them if you haven't, and just ask what's around the corner. Right, we're watching across the country that higher education is really facing a daunting turn. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. St. Edward's just laid off 100 people here in Austin. It's 10% of their workforce. We don't know what higher education is going to look like next year or even this fall because of this crisis. What we do know is that as we begin to navigate our way out of it and survive whatever else is to come in the future, we will need people who are specialized, whether that's a scientist, whether that's a doctor or a nurse, or a tradesperson who knows how to do electrical work or plumbing or pipe fitting or welding. I mean, all of these skilled trades, Texas lacks capacity in immensely. Talk to the Texas AFL-CIO or the Building Trades Council. They know this. They talk about it all the time. We don't train people up to be very well paid blue collar workers building our infrastructure. And so mass investment in that is absolutely needed. And we may see some more of that emerge post pandemic. People investing in those types of skills rather than just the specialized higher education or quote unquote university education. All that's critical. I hope we invest in organizing and in teaching people how to organize and be stronger citizens and advocates in their own communities. I didn't learn it until I got into college, and then from people in my community. But that I consider a trade skill as well. Um, and we're going to need all kinds of new technology and all engineering and all these things, absolutely. But if we're not investing in it quickly, if we're not building the capacity and power amongst ourselves and our communities to demand it, the status quo is going to continue to prevail. We're watching it with the bailouts. All the same folks are getting all the same benefits, and that's because they are an organized cartel that knows how to play the game. And there's more of us than there are of them if we band together and are strategic in how we mobilize. I know we're coming up on time here pretty soon, so I did want to give a couple of quick shout outs, if that's okay, Diana, just ways people can stay plugged in. I'll follow your lead though.
Okay, I actually just had one more question, and then
Go ahead.
it would be great for you to share that. So the last question is kind of just tying in what you said about all of us being advocates in our community. And we definitely think that that first comes with educating, which is why we think it's so important for students in high school and middle school to know that climate change is real. Because right now their current curriculum is not addressing climate change. So how important do you think that will be to the future of organizing in this space?
Yeah. We have to make up for what our school systems don't teach us by design, right? What the State Board of Education fails to provide us, we got to find ways to provide each other. And that's terrible that we have to do that, but we're capable of it. We need to, in terms of science, the basics of climate change, the history of the world, not just both sides of the debate like they've been trying to do for the past few years. All of it's critical, but also real practical, pragmatic knowledge around the land, our relationship with the land, ecology and geography, the rivers and streams of Texas, and how all of this works, where it comes from, different types of soils, all these kinds of things can really be extremely helpful in informing how we approach this work. So it's not all, again, policy and just like getting the right answer, but recognizing that ecology is about a whole system, right? What starts at the top is connected to what's at the bottom, and it goes around and around. Ecology is at the center of how we get out of this, and people learning more about the different parts of the ecological system, the better. And let's beat back and take over the State Board of Education however we can. Let's all organize together every step of the way.
Great, thank you. We definitely will be doing our part, as you said, to make sure that that ecosystem is healthy. So thank you, Dave. I do want to give you a chance to share some of the information about ways that we can get involved with the Sierra Club before we move further with our training.
Yeah. Well, thanks you all for your attention and the space and time. So you can find me. That's an easy way. I'm on Facebook, Dave Cortez. This Friday and Saturday, we're supporting the Gulf South for a Green New Deal Coalition, working with the Carrizo Come Crudo Tribal Nation in their Human Rights Tribunal, Friday and Saturday. I have it shared on my page. You can find it on Texas Sierra Club's Facebook. Basically, South Texas, Brownsville, South Padre, Port of Brownsville, they're proposing to build 3 fracked gas export terminals there, destroy this natural habitat right alongside where they're building the border wall. And it's a sacred site for the Carrizo people. And so they'll have this virtual tribunal this weekend. Next week on May 27th, we'll have a 1-hour Railroad Commission town or candidate forum. Railroad Commission actually regulates oil and gas in the state, believe it or not. And that's what they call it. And that is where oil and gas dumps a lot of their money. So we'll have a candidates forum ahead of the July runoff, and that'll be available the 27th at 7 p.m. Texas Sierra Club, again, is a good place to find that info. Appreciate you all.
Great, thank you so much for your time, and we definitely appreciate you too, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. All right, so now we're going to pivot into learning ways that we can get involved on a local level in this work. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right, so just to give a brief overview of this portion, we'll be discussing exactly what the SBOE is in case you are not aware of that entity, and then also acknowledging current progress, some of the changes that need to happen, discussing why this matters, and then also we'll be going over our call to action. Okay, so the State Board of Education, or also known as the SBOE, is an elected body that sets curriculum standards and revises instructional material for the entire state of Texas. SBOE members host quarterly meetings that are open to the public, and this is when testimonies from community members are collected. And the changes normally take anywhere from a few months up to a year to be approved. And that's why we think it's important for us to begin this outreach now and make sure that we all know what is needed in order to accomplish the change. So, as some of you may know, Texas Freedom Network has been involved in this work for some time. And a few of the recent victories that we've secured were in the beginning of the year when the African American Studies course was approved. So it is now a new history elective for high school students across Texas, and it offers perspectives on Black culture, art, and innovation. And more recently, we've organized around the sex education program, hoping to create a program that is up to date and more inclusive of everyone who attends these state-funded schools. And so the purpose of this is to make sure that the information is medically accurate, and also include information on birth control that appeals to everyone in this demographic, and also is very inclusive of the LGBTQ community. Okay, so just wanted to share a quote about why this is important. There's one issue that will define the contours of this century more dramatically than any other, and that is the urgent threat of a changing climate. Former President Obama shared this quote during his time, and I definitely think it shines light on a reason why we need to address climate change now. Recently, we've seen the planet start to regenerate itself during this time of social distancing, and we think that now more than ever, students deserve to understand the causes and consequences of climate change. This curriculum would empower them to adopt more sustainable lifestyles and prepare them to live with the impact of global warming. It also, we hope, would appeal to them once they get older and are looking for different career opportunities. We're hoping to enlist some of them to help create some of the solutions that we need for addressing climate change. So this matters mainly because we are beginning to make a transition to renewable energy, and we want to make sure that it's a just transition. And by that, we mean that we want to make sure that everyone has access to relevant education and new opportunities that create a pathway to economic stability. Earlier, Dave talked about how economic stability is one of the pieces of the puzzle to this disaster. And we definitely feel like acknowledging climate change and also teaching it, and also making sure that everyone knows about the job opportunities associated with it will make sure that this transition is just. It's pertinent for the next it's pertinent for the next generation to understand how to adjust to this transition and ensure that they are also a part of the solution. So for our call to action, we think that it is important to reach out to the SBOE now and make sure they know that we believe that climate justice should be a part of the science curriculum from high school students. They will be meeting in June, and we hope to connect with them and make sure that this issue is addressed at that next meeting. So we are asking all of you to join us in volunteering by reaching out to your peers and asking them to write emails to the SBOE members, so that they can read through some of our reasons and some of our personal experiences that are attached to this issue. And so the link is posted on the slide. I'll also post it in the chat box shortly if you'd like to sign up for those weeks of action, or I'm sorry, sign up for those text banks. And before I close out, I just kind of wanted to also open the floor for any questions that anyone had in regards to our SBOE call to action or the discussion that we had with Dave.
I do. I have a question.
Okay, go ahead,
Hi,
please.
my name is Olinka Green. How you doing?
Doing great.
One of the things that the gentleman was talking about, the social skills, the technical skills and the advancements that can come out of this as far as social, as far as climate change. I live in an area of Dallas, Texas, 75216. It's a very low income neighborhood. We've been hit very hard by COVID-19 because we weren't given the opportunity to test our people. There's lack of jobs here. We're surrounded by at least 4 Superfund sites. We live in a food desert area. A lot of our people are impacted by health, diabetes, high blood pressure. Um, the average lifespan here is cut by 15 years if you live in this area. One of the things that I'm noticing that I noticed as far as climate change, we have a very high homeless population. And one of the things that's been happening in our communities, they've been cutting down the trees. So our people don't have shade. And that's a big thing because we have a lot of concrete here. And so with climate change, and we know how hot it gets here in Texas, we are experiencing what I call apartheid shade, or apartheid shade, or privatization of shade, where while people who are homeless, they sit up under the trees, and then the city or some private entity comes and cuts down those trees. So that is one of the things that we know, that heat brings about um, uh, crime, brings when our people are hot and we don't have cooling stations for our people to go to, crime comes up. We have people walking all times of the night. We have people walking out times of the day trying to find areas to be cool, whether that be vacant houses or they run you off from the park. So one of the things that I would really like to see, and I've talked about this, is that I would like to see some type of action where we can get a moratorium just for them to stop cutting down our trees, or if we can get trees planted. That's something that a lot of people don't really realize, is that even in our areas, we are denied shade. When we go to get on our buses, we did a study about 2 summers ago. We found out 26 bus stops in the African American community lacked common shelters for our people to stand up under, whether it be rain, sleet, or snow. And if they did give us a seat, it was made out of concrete. So you imagine trying to stand or sit on concrete and wait for a bus that comes maybe like every 30 minutes. And that is what happens in our community. Our buses run every maybe 30 minutes to an hour. So with that, that's how that's affecting us with climate change where we live at, is that we don't have shade. So if you don't have shade, then things can't grow. People can't be cool. And so just giving you a perspective on what's happening, because it might look totally different than something that's happening in Brownsville or something that's happening on the coast, with the water rising. I understand that a Hurricane Katrina. I stayed in the Caribbean, and I left right before the hurricane hit the Caribbean in Puerto Rico. So I know what that devastation looked like, because the town that I lived in, it was totally destroyed, and to see all the beautiful palm trees just gone. You know what I'm saying? And I know it's going to take a long time that to come back, but that really did bother me because I was set up under those trees and to see how that was devastated, but to be in an area where we don't even have trees to be destroyed, where they cut them down. So I just wanted to share that, as far as that might look different from somebody who lives near the Gulf Coast, that our trees are being cut down. We're not even being given the opportunity or the equity of having shade, and we call it apartheid shade. You know, privatization of shade. You see in California where they cut down the trees and poor people have to stand in the heat, and we know that with the Earth's uh, heat wave going up, it's gonna be a sizzle out there, and we don't have cooling stations. And with COVID-19, if we don't have this thing straightened out, we're gonna have a real problem because we don't have no place to go for our people. You know, and a lot of the apartment complexes that we go and feed in, they don't have adequate air conditioning. So to get win the unit, you got to go through a whole bunch of stuff with the city of Dallas. Um, if somebody's kind enough to donate it, you know. So that's just what I'm just saying. Even with trying to stay cool, it's a struggle for people who are poor. So I just wanted to address that. As far as not saying what a solution is, you know, because it would be not to cut down damn trees. But I just wanted to share that because that's a different perspective of what happens where I live at as far as with climate change.
Well, thank you for sharing. And we did receive a few tips in the chat box about some organizations that are doing this type of work. So for instance, Tree Folks in Austin is a good example of a nonprofit that plants trees. And I can also give you my email address, and maybe we can do some research to see if there are organizations like this in Dallas that are doing this work.
Well, what I would like to see, I would like to see Dallas to, you know, and that comes in a bigger thing, for them to stop cutting down the trees. You know what I'm saying? You
Right.
know, to cut down, you know, it's something to, you know, to come in and plant the trees, but if you stop cutting down the trees, you know what I'm saying? To stop that. That's the big thing. But yeah, I definitely will take what you have, sis. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'll go ahead and drop my email address in the chat box now. And
Okay.
anyone who has questions after this can also use that email address as well. Is there any other questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I'll go ahead and drop the link for the sign up sheet for the volunteer. And I also wanted to just highlight a few events that we have coming up. So on Wednesday and Friday of this week, we'll be hosting our text banks for this week of action. So the text bank on Wednesday will be from 5 to 7. The one on Friday is from 11 to 1. I also wanted to bump the event that Dave spoke about on May 27th for the Railroad Commissioner Candidate Forum. We do encourage you all to join that that discussion so that you are fully aware of the roles of that position, and then also the candidates that are running in your area. Okay.
In Dallas, we also have a climate justice event Wednesday night. If anyone is available, Southern Sector Rising is hosting an event for environmental health justice in Dallas. So we'd love to see you. And I dropped that in the chat as well.
I did want to share something really cool that's happening locally here. A lot of groups who are, you know, either a part of Texas Rising or a part of different local orgs, they're all compiling to create an El Paso Green New Deal that we can present to our city council that can affirm and like hold the city accountable for future environmental efforts and changes. So if y'all like have the capacity and connections with like local people, it would be cool if you guys could brainstorm like ways that you can hold the city accountable for things like renewable energy and for like environmental racism, which is like really big here. So that's been really cool. So if y'all have like questions about that, I would like love to help you because it's really cool what they're doing here.
Thank you for sharing, Sabrina. Okay, so if you are interested in joining that volunteer shift on Wednesday or Friday, I just dropped the link here in the chat box. I also put my email address one more time. But are there any last questions before we wrap up? Okay. Well, unless Asmara has anything to add, we can go ahead and wrap up. And again, I just wanted to thank Dave Cortez so much for taking the time out to share with us some insight on how we can be further involved with this issue. I hope that you all feel empowered and you have tools that you can use in the future. So thank you so much once again for joining, and I'll see you guys soon.